And our top story tonight, they've been accused of rewriting history over the death of Diana and falsely accusing Prince Charles of wanting his mother to abdicate. And tonight, the Sun newspaper exclusively revealed to this programme that the makers of the crown have even tampered with the Queen's most famous speech. Well, in 1992, the marriages of 3 of her 4 children collapsed and a fire ripped through her beloved Windsor Castle, resulting in Her Majesty the Queen coining the term Annus Horribilis in a speech to mark her 40 years on the throne at the Guildhall in London. But in the new series of The Crown, the writers have decided to spice up the already very dramatic speech, adding in some pretty out-of-character sounding, gushy, illiterate guff, in my humble opinion, calling her family, this is a quote, literally my son and water. Well, someone who was at that banquet in 1992 and heard the speech firsthand is the royal commentator Jenny Bond, who joins me now. Jenny, I know I'm a pedant when it comes to this, but these quotes from the Crown version of the speech have really made me quite cross. How are you feeling about them?
Well, I just don't know why Peter Morgan felt that he had to tamper with a speech which, as you've already suggested, was incredibly dramatic. Yes, I was there in the Guildhall. It was a few days after the Windsor Castle fire. The Queen had a cold. Her voice was rough from the smoke she'd inhaled during inspecting the Windsor Castle destruction. And she was a very sad and rather pathetic figure who made this impassioned speech appealing for more compassion, more understanding for those who scrutinise institutions such as the monarchy, and she fully accepted that scrutiny. It was a wonderful speech, carefully crafted, full of drama, and I don't know why they had to tamper with it or use, as you say, some rather extraordinary terminology.
And the thing that really annoyed me, Jenny, is where they said that she would have used a phrase like, my family are literally the sun and water. I mean, A, it doesn't even make sense. And it's just such an irritating use of that overused word, literally. The Queen would never have done that. She was renowned for her understatement, not her overstatement.
Yeah, I mean, there were times when she did pay tribute to her family, but this was not one of them. I don't know why she would have paid tribute to her family in 1992, her Annus Horribilis. I mean, her family, by this stage, were being derided as the most dysfunctional family in the world. They were a bit of a laughingstock. I mean, you just have to put it in context of that year, very briefly. 1992 started with the split up of the Duke and Duchess of York. We then all went off to India, and Diana sat at the Taj Mahal alone, making it very clear that her marriage was in trouble. Then the Morton book came out. Diana had thrown herself down the stairs, tried to commit suicide, slashed her wrists. And then we trundle on to August, when we find Fergie having her toes sucked by her financial advisor. And then we have Squidgygate, Diana berating the family and having a very intimate conversation with a man who was clearly her lover. And then we come to the fire and the separation of Charles and Diana. I mean, what a year. Not a year in which you would say, gosh, my family are great, aren't they?
And also, Jenny, as you've just so eloquently pointed out, not a year that the producers of The Crown would have to elaborate. There was enough drama in that period in the royal family. And yet, you know, we're constantly told that the producers say everybody knows that this is a dramatised version of real events, that we don't need any disclaimers. But do you think people do know that it's drama and not a sort of docudrama?
I know that they think the very opposite. Goodness me, there's particularly young people, I was talking about the sort of 20s and 30s, friends of my daughter. Now, they all know the job I've done all these years, not really be very interested in it. And all of a sudden, they're watching this and they're coming up to me saying, gosh, I didn't know that happened. I said, well, it didn't. It probably didn't happen at all, and it certainly didn't happen like that. So, yes, people are believing it, and they're believing it over in the States as well. That's why I think there really should be a disclaimer at the start of every episode. I mean, it's a great drama. It's fantastic. But it is a drama. It's a piece of fiction loosely based on some truths.
And of course, this series, we've had already a lot of controversy in the papers. We've had John Major bitterly complaining because this series seems to imply that he had a conversation with Prince Charles about the Queen abdicating. We've had people complaining that it sounds like in the next series, Diana's fatal car crash will be shown on the series. And we've had complaints because apparently Prince Philip's relationship with Penny Mountbatten is being slightly over-egged in this series. But Jenny, I just wonder whether all these things that go drip, drip in the newspapers is to get it into the newspapers so that it gets maximum publicity. Is it a publicity stunt?
Well, any publicity is good publicity, and yes, they've got a huge amount of publicity because of this. But I do think, personally, I've come to the sad conclusion that I think that The Crown should end, and it should end before they get to what they are filming right now. They've been filming it in the last few days, which is the death of Diana. Not showing the crash itself, as I understand, but reenacting the Mercedes, the paparazzi around the tunnel. I just feel so much for William and Harry and all those involved. They don't need to know about this. They certainly don't need to see it again.
Jenny, just another story that's on the front pages tomorrow. If we look at the front page of the Daily Mail, their secondary story there is now Charles takes royal role, Harry begged to keep. Now, of course, this is because Prince Charles, King Charles, we're always doing that, aren't we, is now going to be head of the Royal Marines, the totemic head of the Royal Marines. We know that that was a role that Harry was very proud that he held when he took it over from his grandfather, Philip. Do you think this is a big story?
Well, not a huge story, but I do think that perhaps it's a gesture from Charles that might placate Harry somewhat, in that I think he would have been quite jealous had it gone to a younger member of the family. To go to King Charles perhaps is the easiest way out of this. It's a very prestigious, historic role, one that, as you say, Harry loved, but he's been stripped of his military appointments. And yes, he's bitter about it, but I think it'd be even more bitter if it was given, let's say, to William.
Yeah, that's a very good way of looking at it. Jenny Bond, thank you so much for your insights as ever.